Exposed. The incredible moment a young boy's heartwarming plea changed everything forever. Evan stood at the edge of the park, a sea of kids playing ball, laughing, living out the dreams that felt just beyond his reach. His heart pounded as he watched them toss and catch, the bright orange baseball glistening under the sun like hope itself. A single tear rolled down his cheek, mixing with the sweat of a long summer day. For one fleeting moment, he could almost hear his father's voice cheering him on. This was supposed to be his moment, a chance to join the local baseball league. But with his mother working multiple jobs, that dream felt like a distant star, twinkling but unreachable. The town buzzed with excitement over an upcoming fundraiser aimed at helping kids like him play the sports they loved. Families gathered to ensure its success, their wealth plastered like a badge of honor. Still, whispers lingered around the playground. Some kids were excluded from activities, taunted for their worn shoes or hand-me-down jerseys. Evan clenched his fists, feeling the mounting pressure of unfairness. Then came that day, a school day that started like any other. As Evan sat in class, he watched Timmy, a boy in his grade, retreat to the bathroom with tears in his eyes after facing some mean-spirited ridicule. Evan's chest tightened. He could feel the weight of every unkind word, every moment of isolation. As kids passed notes and giggled, the laughter felt heavy with judgment. That was when he realized that every one of them, rich or struggling, carried burdens hidden beneath their smiles. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The day of the fundraiser arrived, and nerves tangled in Evan's stomach as he watched families filter into the schoolyard. He could see the excitement radiating from affluent parents, while others stood to the side, faces masked in worry. Each glance felt like an echo of uncertainty. Evan summoned his courage, heart racing like a fastball flying through the air. He had to speak up. When the microphone was handed to him, silence fell. He looked around at the faces in the crowd, their mix of wealth and worry all reflected in his own young heart. He stuttered at first, but something inside him roared, propelling his words. We can all struggle, so why tear each other down? His voice cracked, raw and real. Murmurs swept through the crowd like a gentle breeze shifting the leaves. Everyone deserves a chance. As he spoke, something shifted. A wave of vulnerability washed over the crowd, a shared understanding. The tension cracked like fragile ice beneath weight, and Evan's sincerity broke through the divide. People began to nod. They recognized the truth in his plea, the deep yearning for unity amid differences. But as the applause and gasps faded, the fallout loomed large. Evan could feel the tension rise, hearts unsettled, the fragility of their collective beliefs laid bare. Questions hung in the air. What would it take to unite a community fractured by judgment? As the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows, the uncertainty remained thick. Where would they go from here? Would bravery lead to change, or would it falter? Only time would tell. Evan stepped down from the makeshift stage, heart still racing, and the applause fading behind him. Adrenaline surged through him, yet fear curled around his insides. How would everyone react? Would they remember his words or dismiss them like so many before? He spotted Timmy in the back of the crowd, his face still streaked with remnants of tears. Evan's chest tightened. He wanted to run over, embrace his friend, and tell him everything would be okay, that they were in this together. But before he could take a step, he noticed a group of older boys lingering nearby, smirking at him. Their laughter cut like ice. Look who thinks he is a hero now, one of them sneered, arms crossed defiantly. Evan tried to hide his disappointment, but inside, doubt gnawed at him. He had opened his heart, exposed his truth, and yet here it was fear, once more, ready to shatter everything he'd hoped for. Would his words change anything? Or would this moment be another empty promise twisted into memories of laughter and scorn? He decided to push through, his feet leading him toward Timmy. The boy looked up, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. It brought a warmth to Evan's heart, a fire that seemed to melt some of the frost from the whispers around him. "Hey man," he said, forcing a smile. "You okay?" Timmy nodded slowly, small lips quivering. I liked what you said. I just wish it could change everything. You know?" Evan's heart swelled. "Me too, buddy," he replied softly. "But it's a start, right? If we stand together." A commotion erupted behind him as voices escalated. Evan turned to see the older boys had gathered some others, egging each other on. One had thrown a soda can at the ground, the laughter brutal like a war cry. Evan felt a chill. This was their way of reacting to change, resistance, mockery, anger. "Hey! What is the big deal?" Evan shouted, feeling small but determined. The laughter stopped, incredulous eyes now fixed on him. "Why does it matter if someone is different? Why not be kind?" One of the boys, taller and broader, stepped forward. "Because people like you and Timmy are weak. Why should we care about you?" Something snapped inside Evan, a resilience he didn't even know he possessed. "Because everyone deserves a chance. You've got nothing to lose by lifting someone up instead of tearing them down." Stunned silence enveloped the crowd. Parents who had been watching stepped in closer, curiosity piqued, uncertainty mixed with concern. Timmy stood steadfast next to Evan, a small but strong presence. Evan took a deep breath, realizing this moment wasn't just about him anymore. It was about every kid who was ever pushed aside or made to feel small. He locked eyes with the tallest boy, refusing to back down. "We're just kids. We want to play just like you. What is so wrong with that?" A ripple of various emotions passed through the crowd, confusion, sympathy, and anger, all colliding in a chaotic dance. Just as Evan could feel the tide shift toward something greater, the tall boy's face twisted in disdain. "Let us see how long this lasts," he muttered, turning away with his friends. Evan felt the collective sigh of the onlookers, the murmurs igniting a new awareness. Something was changing, but what would come next? Would the adults step in, or would they let this divide fester? He faced Timmy, heart pounding with hope and fear intertwined. "Did I do the right thing?" he whispered. Timmy squeezed his hand, determination sparkling in his tear-stricken eyes. "Yeah, but it's just the beginning." Under the fading sunlight, a new question hung in the air. Could they rally others to join their cause? Would they find allies willing to challenge the tone in their town? The spark had ignited, but will it blaze brightly or flicker out? Evan watched the crowd murmur, apprehension and excitement swirling around him like leaves caught in a gust of wind. He could see some parents looking at each other, exchanging glances that hinted at unspoken concerns. Would they support their kids? Would they rally behind the cause or retreat into silence? Timmy's grip on his hand felt reassuring, as if they were anchoring each other against the tide of uncertainty. "What do we do now?" Timmy asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Evan took a deep breath, his mind racing with possibilities. "We need to talk to as many kids as possible. We can't let them feel alone. If we can get just a few more people to join us, maybe it can grow." Timmy nodded, his eyes shining. Together, they turned and faced the gathering crowd, still a bit anxious, yet eager for direction. Evan's heart pounded. He felt the weight of their hope. "Hey, everyone!" he called out, raising a hand in a bid to draw attention. "Let us gather round. I know this isn't easy, but we can make a difference." We just have to believe in each other. Slowly, kids began to step closer, and Evan's heart lifted. Some were still skeptical, their brows furrowed. Others remained on the edges, but the tension in their faces softened just a little. "Who's with us?" Evan asked, his voice steady. "If you care about making our place better, come and stand with us." To his surprise, a few kids from nearby had moved forward. They were small, but their faces wore determination. The older boys might have jeered, but it was this group's quiet strength that began to shine. A girl with curly hair stepped forward, her hands clenched. "We're tired of being scared," she said fiercely. "We just want to hang out and be friends. We shouldn't have to worry about what others think." Evan's heart swelled with pride as he nodded. "Exactly. It's about creating a space where we all feel safe, where we support each other, like a team." The murmurs of agreement grew louder. Suddenly, it was more than just Evan and Timmy. More kids were stepping forward, sharing their stories and struggles. Each voice added to the roar of camaraderie that built with every moment. Then he spotted one of the parents, Mr. Larson, walking over with a serious expression. Evan's heart raced again, fearing the worst. But as the man approached, he raised his hand to quiet the crowd. "I've been listening," he said, his voice cutting through the noise. "You kids have something really important to say. If you want to gather and talk about what is going on, I'm here for you. I believe in standing up for what is right." The crowd cheered, a rush of energy surging through Evan as hope surged in his chest. Was this what they needed? Was something finally changing? As excitement thrummed in his veins, he looked at Timmy, who was beaming. "See? People do care." But before Evan could fully bask in this victory, the sound of scornful laughter broke through. He turned to see the older boys creeping closer, their smug expressions slipping into something darker. "You think your little gathering is going to change anything?" the tall boy from before called out. "You're all wasting your time. Just wait. This will end badly for you." Evan's stomach dropped. Was he ready to face what would come next? Would their spark of hope withstand the storm that threatened to crush them? He clenched his fists, feeling the words stuck in his throat, heavy with doubt. This was just the beginning, and now it felt like everything was on the line. Could they really fight against the tide, or would they be swept away? With new resolve, he turned to his friends. "We've got to keep going. No matter what is thrown at us, we can't stop fighting for what is right." Together, they held their ground, standing strong as uncertainty loomed close. But would their unity withstand the impending clash that was about to unfold? The answer felt like a weight on their shoulders, and Evan could only wonder what the next moments would hold. The laughter from the older boys echoed in Evan's ears, a cruel reminder of the challenge they faced. He looked around at the younger kids, who had stepped forward, eyes wide but filled with a spark of determination. Something was changing, and he couldn't let harsh words snuff out their fire. "Listen up," Evan shouted, his voice cutting through the laughter. "This isn't just about us. It's about standing up for what we believe in. If we're going to face them, we have to do it together." Some kids in the crowd nodded, and the energy shifted, even if just a little. Fear was still present, like a cloud hanging over them, but hope flickered brighter. Timmy squeezed Evan's hand tighter. "We can't let them bully us," he called out, emboldened by Evan's spirit. The girl with curly hair, now standing next to Timmy, raised her voice. "We're here for each other. We won't back down." Suddenly, more voices joined in, each child sharing a piece of their story, tears threatening to spill, but quickly turning into resolve. The crowd was becoming a chorus of support, and the older boys looked like shadows against the growing light of their unity. "Your fear doesn't control us," another boy shouted, his fists clenched. "We deserve to feel safe." Evan's heart raced, not out of fear but exhilaration. It felt like they were building something, brick by brick, from all the doubts and frustrations. He could almost touch the strength that coursed through them. Mr. Larson stepped forward again, a satisfied smile curving his lips. This is what it looks like when a community comes together. You have every right to stand tall and express how you feel. I'm proud of you. His approval sent ripples of encouragement through the crowd, reinforcing their resolve. But just as the cheers grew louder, the older boy stepped forward, his expression hardening into one of anger. You think this little pep rally is going to change our world? You're just kids playing pretend. Evan took a step toward him, heart pounding. You may see us as just kids, but we are strong together. We have a voice. As his words hung in the air, something electrifying happened. Others in the crowd began to echo him. We have a voice. They repeated, a chant building in power. Each repetition felt like a lifted weight, the doubt being expelled with every syllable. The older boys hesitated, their bravado weakening against the tide of belief that surged around Evan. Their laughter faltered, replaced by uncertainty, as they began to back away, realizing the strength of unity was greater than their threats. Timmy looked up at Evan, eyes shining. We're doing it. They can see us. In that moment, Evan's chest swelled with pride. No longer were they a single voice or even a small group. They had become a movement, one that refused to be silenced. But just as hope soared, Evan's gaze caught a glimpse of adults watching. Some looked impressed, but others wore frowns. Were they supportive or skeptical? Could they handle the truth of what was happening? Evan held that thought for a moment, the question biting at him like a winter chill. Was this the moment they needed to push further, or were they on the brink of being crushed again? That fear sat heavy in the air, and Evan could only wonder which path lay ahead, questioning if their newly lit spirit would be enough to truly change anything. As the crowd cheered, he felt the weight of responsibility pulling at him. Would they have the strength to endure whatever came next? How could he keep that fire burning? And in that mix of hope and uncertainty, a thought struck him. What if they needed a plan? What if the next step was even bigger than they ever imagined? The crowd buzzed with a new energy, but Evan felt the knot in his stomach tighten. They had started something, that much was clear, but what next? How could he keep the momentum alive and transform their voices into something tangible, something that couldn't be ignored? All right, everyone, he called out, raising his hands to silence them. The noise died down, and tension hung in the air like a thick fog. I know we've just begun, but we can't stop here. We need a plan, a way to show everyone that this matters. Timmy, still holding Evan's hand tightly, looked around as if the answer might be hidden in the faces surrounding them. What if we have a meeting? I mean a real one. Somewhere bigger. Invite everyone, he suggested eagerly. A few kids nodded, and whispers spread through the crowd. The idea took root. Evan felt a spark ignite in his chest. That's it, he exclaimed, heart racing. We can gather at the park. More people, more voices. A girl from the back shouted, and we can make signs. We should write down everything we feel. Yeah, another chimed in. Messages that show we're united. Evan smiled, the wheels in his mind turning fast now. We'll tell our stories, our truths. We'll show them what we want. Each suggestion fueled his confidence. Their shared dreams were becoming a real vision. Mr. Larson stepped closer, his eyes twinkling. I'd be happy to help organize that, he said. But remember, this will be challenging. Some people may disagree, even try to discourage you. Evan glanced back at the older boys, now lingering at the edge of the crowd, their expressions unreadable. Standing tall, he squared his shoulders. That's okay. We'll be ready. This is our moment. As the excitement swelled again, he saw the spark in the children's eyes, a light that hadn't been there moments before. Hope danced in their expressions, and for the first time in a long while, they truly looked brave. Hours turned into days as they met in secret, scribbling messages, designing colorful banners, each crafted with a piece of their hearts. Evan felt an unfamiliar thrill each time they gathered, sharing their dreams and fears, all the while forming an unbreakable bond. On the day of the gathering, the park buzzed with energy. Kids filled the grassy expanse with their signs, laughter, and spirited conversation. Evan stood among them, the sun warming his back as he looked out at their unified front. This moment was proof they had become more than kids just shying away from bullies. Now they were comrades in a cause. And then, as they prepared to march down the street together, Evan noticed something in the distance. A crowd was forming at the edge of the park. Adults from the neighborhood, including some who had frowns during the last event. His heart raced. Would they support them or shut them down? Just as he opened his mouth to shout for everyone to gather, a voice cut through, echoing a familiar sentiment. "What do we want?" it called, and a wave of responses flowed back. The tension in the air shifted once more, but uncertainty loomed. Evan couldn't shake the feeling that everything could hinge on this moment. He drew a deep breath, ready to face whatever came next. "Are we ready to show them who we are?" he yelled. And then he waited, heart pounding, the world around him holding its breath. What if this wasn't just about today? What if this changed everything forever? Evan's question hung in the air, electrifying the atmosphere. The crowd, a mix of eager children and wary adults, seemed to pulse with uncertainty. Eyes shifted nervously, some glancing at the signs they had made, others squinting at the group of adults who had begun to approach them. Timmy squeezed Evan's hand tighter, his little fingers trembling slightly. "What if they don't like what we're doing?" he whispered, eyes wide with fear. Evan turned to Timmy, their faces close. "We can't think like that. We've come too far," he replied, voice steady despite the uncertainty bubbling inside him. "Okay, but what if they yell?" "Then we yell louder," Evan replied, trying to inject courage into his friend. Around them, a wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd, anticipation swirling as the adults drew closer. As the first adult reached them, a tall woman with frizzy hair and glasses perched atop her nose, Evan's heartbeat thundered in his ears. She stopped, surveying the throng of kids proudly holding bright, handmade signs. Each poster declared bold declarations of unity and hope. "What is going on here?" she asked, her voice steady yet cautious. Evan stepped forward, voice rising above the chatter. "We want to talk about how we can stand up for each other. We're tired of being scared. We want everyone to know that we deserve to feel safe and happy." A ripple of gasps echoed through the kids. Some punched their fists in the air, invigorated by Evan's words. The woman blinked, taken aback by the data created in that moment, a group of children determined to make their voices heard. Another adult joined her, a man with a beard and a frown that seemed etched onto his face. "I don't see why kids like you should be involved in these things. You should stick to what you know, playing and having fun," he muttered, his tone dismissive. Evan felt the breath of disappointment in the air. Judging by the angry glances exchanged among his friends, he sensed their spirits beginning to falter. He had to turn this around. "Because this is our life too," he shouted, willing every ounce of his little frame to resonate with determination. "We may be kids, but we have voices, and we're gonna use them. You might think we should just play, but we're living in a world where those who are supposed to protect us sometimes don't." Silence fell, the tension thick enough to slice through. He could see the adults exchanging glances. Some leaned in, their brows furrowing thoughtfully, while others still bore skeptical expressions. Evan knew he had to seize this moment. "We want to show everyone that kindness and respect matter, that we are united, and we want a change." A murmur of agreement rippled through the gathering. As the adults considered his words, Evan felt a sense of unity swell around him. It was as if the air itself charged with energy, sparking new life into their initial fear. One of the women in the back, her blonde hair cascading in waves, stepped up. "I think it's wonderful that you're all here, speaking out," she said, her voice warm. "But you have to understand, real change comes from dialogue, not just demands. Are you prepared to listen and learn?" Evan swallowed hard. This was bigger than he had imagined, but the challenge excited him. "Yes!" he shouted, feeling the yearning for connection spill from his soul. "We're ready. We just want our voices to matter." And then, from the gathering, a ripple of support began, the faint sound of clapping, slowly building until it roared like thunder. Evan's heart soared as he glanced around, seeing bravery reflected in every face. But just as the moment felt triumphant, he noticed the other group of older kids at the fringes, watching with crossed arms. Their stares held secrets, questioning motives. "Hey!" one shouted, breaking the rhythm of their celebration. "What do you plan to do if you don't get what you want?" The question echoed in Evan's mind, twisting at the edges of his confidence. But as faces turned back to him, expectant and hopeful, he realized he didn't have an answer. Not yet. And in that moment of uncertainty, Evan took a deep breath, hoping that whatever lay ahead for him, for his friends, for everyone, it would shape their lives forever. What if their biggest challenge was yet to come? Evan felt the sharpness of the older kid's question pierce the moment like a sudden chill. He could feel the weight of anticipation, the crowd leaning in, every eye searching his face for assurance. How could he possibly respond when doubt crept into his mind, shadowing his resolve? Still, probing their faces, he found a glimmer of hope. We'll keep asking. We want to give up," he shot back, his voice quaking slightly, but rising with radiant determination. The adults leaned closer, taking in every word. Timmy's grip on his hand was firm, his little frame shaking with nerves. But Evan sensed the fire in his friend's heart, the pure belief that they could make a difference. In that instant, he whispered, "We're in this together, okay?" Timmy nodded fiercely, his tiny face resolute. The murmurs of support began again, the clapping building, and it didn't take long for the energy to morph into something bigger. What started as whispers gathered strength as kids began chanting, "We want change. We want change." Each repetition was like a small earthquake, shaking the ground beneath their feet. The man with the beard furrowed his brow deeper. "You kids need to understand how the world works," he declared, skepticism dripping from his words. "You think you can just shout a few phrases and things will magically change?" Evan met his gaze, drawing a deep breath. "No, but we believe in making a stand. If we don't say something, nothing will change. We're not just kids, we're people who have feelings and dreams." The sincerity in his voice caught even him by surprise, igniting a spark deep within. The adults shuffled, some visibly absorbing his words, while others remained skeptical. The woman with frizzy hair took a step closer, her glasses slipping down her nose. "It's true that change takes effort. It requires talking to each other, not just shouting slogans," she countered gently. "What if you brainstorm solutions and talked with us about them?" Evan's heart raced, a pathway of possibilities opening up before him. Discussing ideas? That felt like action, not just fleeting hope. "Yes. We want to collaborate," he replied, voice firm. "We can share what we feel, and you can share what you know." The air buzzed with possibility, but just as Evan felt momentum swell, the older boy spoke again, a hint of sarcasm coloring his tone. "You really think they care about what kids like you have to say?" His words stung, but Evan retaliated with the fire of determination burning in his chest. "We can't be afraid to speak. If we don't say what we feel, then how can they hear us?" There was a shift among the adults, skeptics softening, others leaning in as whispers of agreement spread. The kids behind Evan were starting to chant again, louder now, their voices creating a wave of sound that crashing against the barrier set by doubt. Evan took a step back, allowing Timmy to join him at the front, puffing out his little chest with pride. Together, they posed a united front. We believe we can make a difference. Together, we can show that our voices matter. But as the crowd wrapped Evan in a warm cloak of support, he sensed an iceberg of silence lurking in the back. The older kids, who had been watching, still crossing their arms, their expressions unreadable. What happens if you actually fail? One of them challenged, a sharp edge to their words, plunging Evan back into uncertainty. Just as he opened his mouth to respond, a sudden thought struck him like a lightning bolt. What if failure isn't the end? What if it's just the beginning of something even bigger? He shouted into the crowd, heart pounding, as eyes widened. Could it be true? Would they see it that way? As the silence settled back over the gathering, Evan's heart raced, the weight of the moment wrapping around him. Would this unexpected challenge push him to uncover paths he never knew existed? And just like that, in the depths of uncertainty, a flicker of courage ignited once more. What if this moment was only the precursor to something he never could have imagined? The silence that followed Evan's words hung in the air like a fragile bubble, waiting to burst. He could feel the collective heartbeat of the crowd, the echo of uncertainty, shifting into something else. The older kids stood still, their confidence wavering as they processed what he had just declared. Then, like a spark meeting tinder, a little girl from the back shouted, "I don't want to fail. I want to try." Her voice pierced through the quiet like a sudden light breaking dawn. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd, a swell of shared hope rising up around him. "Me too," shouted another voice, this one belonging to a boy with messy hair. "I've got ideas. We can do this." The chant morphed again, ringing true. We want change. We want change. The energy pulsed, feeding off Evan's earlier courage. Timmy beamed up at Evan, his wide eyes shimmering with determination. "See? They're with us!" he exclaimed, bouncing on his toes. But in the back of Evan's mind, the question lingered. Was it enough? Would just shouting louder help them break through the doubts of the grown-ups? He scanned the faces around him, hoping to find affirmation. They looked back at him, young and eager, still filled with a naivety that felt refreshing yet daunting. Then a young girl with pigtails stepped forward. "If we fail, then we can learn. We can try again, right?" Her earnestness spoke volumes, pushing away the icy doubt that gripped Evan's heart. The adults around them seemed to soften more with every heartfelt declaration, their skepticism slowly thawing into curiosity. They weren't as closed off as Evan had feared. They were starting to listen. Feeling the momentum swell, Evan raised his arms. "Let us gather our ideas. I know we can think of solutions. What if we wrote letters, spoke to the town meetings, even made art to express what we want?" Each suggestion seemed to ignite another ripple of enthusiasm, heads nodding, voices chiming in, building a mosaic of hope. "Art," another child shouted. "We can draw posters." "Yeah," a girl added, "and we can tell our parents what we want." Evan felt his heart swell. They were brainstorming. They were planning. In that moment, before the sun began to set, something shifted. They weren't just kids anymore. They were dreamers. They were change-makers. Through a thickening haze of excitement, Evan glanced back at the older kids. Some still crossed their arms defensively, but he noticed a few had started to watch with a different intensity, as if they were considering the potential of what this collective voice might really mean. Just as Evan felt a small swell of triumph, an adult spoke up, one he hadn't noticed before, a man with kind eyes who had been standing quietly at the edge. "If you kids are serious, we're here to listen. I'd love to help you put your ideas into action. You just need to show us how passionate you are." His words hung in the air, heavy with possibilities. Evan's insides churned with excitement and dread. Could they really harness this energy to create something meaningful? Are you with us? Timmy shouted, his voice piercing the gathering thunder of anticipation. Evan looked at the faces around him, all of them filled with a spark of determination. Blood pulsed through Evan's veins, electric and alive. He realized this wasn't just about him anymore. It was about every single one of them. The older boy who had challenged him stepped forward, eyes narrowed, yet filled with curiosity. "What if we don't know how to make change?" he asked. Evan took a deep breath, fueling the fire within. "Then we'll figure it out together." But just as hope soared to dizzying heights, an unexpected sound sliced through the low rumble of thunder, dark clouds ominously gathering above. How would they face the storm that was approaching, both literal and metaphorical? Evan's heart raced. Would this change the course of their journey? As droplets began to fall, he knew they would either have to push forward and embrace the challenge, or retreat into the shadow of doubt. And with that, the question loomed in the stormy air, would they stand together to face whatever came next? As the first drops of rain pelted the ground, a hush swept over the gathering. The laughter and enthusiasm that buzzed just moments ago was replaced by an air of uncertainty that clung like the moisture in the thickening atmosphere. Evan looked up at the darkening sky, feeling a chill run through him. Was this a sign? Nature reflecting their fears? He clenched his fists, determination brewing in his chest. "All right, everyone," he called out, raising his voice again, trying to push away the unease. "Let's find shelter and keep talking. We're not done yet." Timmy nodded eagerly, the playful grin still plastered on his face. "Yeah, we can meet up under the big tree. It's got a great overhang." The children, invigorated by the idea of continuing despite the rain, quickly began to move, their chatter now laced with excitement and urgency. They scrambled toward the large oak that stood nearby, a stalwart guardian against the weather above. When they reached the tree, they gathered closely, laughter mingling with the rhythmic patter of raindrops cascading from the branches. The adults they'd been focused on also hustled under the shelter, their expressions softening as they observed the resilience forming before them. "Okay, ideas. Let us keep going," Evan urged, heart pounding with exhilaration. "What are we going to do with our voices?" The energy was palpable. Another girl stepped forward, her hair sticking to her forehead. "We can make a video. Show the whole town what we want." Cheers erupted, their voices rising high, even against the backdrop of the storm. Evan felt a spark of hope ignite again, the flame flickering back to life. "What else?" he encouraged, eyes gleaming. "Let us get the grown-ups on our side. How do we convince them to see our ideas?" Just then, the older boy, who had challenged Evan, stepped up again, some of that initial annoyance replaced with awe. "What if we tell a story?" he said, brows furrowing in a mix of thoughtfulness and newfound respect. "Like, why this matters to us personally. Maybe if we share how we feel, they'll get it." Evan felt pride swell at the boyish change in tone. "Yes. Stories matter. Everyone has a story, and if we share ours suddenly, the clouds seemed to part just a little, letting through a shaft of sunlight that illuminated the kids gathered below. It felt like a spotlight, highlighting their commitment and feverish enthusiasm. Evan's heart raced. Was it possible they could really do this? Let us each share what we care about. It can be anything. Not just the usual problems, Timmy shouted, bouncing with excitement. "I want to fix the playground. I want more swings. Or tell them about keeping our parks clean." A girl interjected, bouncing into the conversation. As ideas flew back and forth, Evan marveled at the transformation before him. It wasn't just him guiding them anymore. They were forming a united front, each child a vital piece of the puzzle. But just as he felt they were on the verge of a breakthrough, A deeper rumble of thunder turned their joy into silence once again. The clouds thickened, and a gust of wind whipped around them, sending ripples of worry across the group. Evan took a steadying breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. "We're going to be okay," he said, forcing a calmness into his voice that he barely felt himself. "This storm can't stop us. It just means we might have to get a little wet." With determination reflected in each pair of eyes, they resumed their planning, the rain now a background hum to their fervent discussions. They were out in the storm, ready to brave whatever was thrown their way, united in purpose. But in that beautifully fierce moment, Evan felt a pang of worry rise again. How much would they need to weather to find the change they sought? Would they have the strength to see this through? As the rain poured down harder, drenching them, he couldn't help but to wonder, would their voices be strong enough, even amidst the thunder? The rain fell harder, but so did their spirits. Evan and his friends huddled under the massive oak, laughter mixing with the rhythm of the storm. Each drop felt like a promise of trials faced, of courage gathered. The thunder roared overhead, but within that protective canopy, they felt united, ready to take on the world. "Who cares about the rain?" Evan shouted to the group, a grin wider than the storm clouds. "This is our moment." As droplets slid down their faces, they began to share their stories. Each tale was a thread weaving into the tapestry of their community. Timmy spoke of late nights worrying whether he'd get to play. A girl recounted the fear of being alone on the playground, while another boy shared his passion to start a recycling initiative. With each confession, the weight of their fears shifted, transforming into a dazzling display of strength. "Hey!" Timmy exclaimed, suddenly inspired. "Let us make a sign for each story. One for playgrounds, one for kindness, one for teamwork." "Yeah!" the others cheered. "Let us show them what we value." The rain tapped cheerily on the leaves, but it no longer felt like a barrier, it felt like a celebration of their resolve. The energy blossomed around them, buoyed by the dream of making their voices heard, of being more than just kids shouting into the void. And just like that, Evan's worries began to melt away. "We should meet every week. Make it a thing," he suggested. "A club where we can come together and keep these ideas alive." Excitement rippled through them. Bright eyes sparkled as hands shot up, each child eager to contribute to the plan. Evan felt pride swell in his chest, realizing they weren't just kids needing protection. They were leaders, shaping their own narratives. But even with the hope in the air, doubt still lingered, brought on by the heavy clouds above. Would the adults truly listen? Would this wave of passion withstand the storms of criticism and skepticism they would inevitably face? As if reading his thoughts, the frizzy-haired woman who had initially questioned them stepped forward. "I see you're all passionate, and that's important. But it's also essential to have a plan to present your ideas to the community." Evan nodded rapidly, soaking in her words. "What if we invite parents to our next meeting?" "Yes!" Timmy cried. "And we can ask them to share their stories, too. They might have things to say that support us." As the rain eased, a dawn of possibility breathed through the group. The tension dissipated, replaced by a tangible excitement, the thrill of collective action. "But what about the older kids?" someone asked quietly, glancing anxiously back toward the watching group. The older boys were still there, arms crossed but expressions now wary rather than dismissive. Evan took a deep breath. "We need to reach out to them. Invite them to hear our ideas, too. Whatever they think, at least we can show them that we're serious." A boy from the back spoke up. "If they refuse to listen, then maybe we can show them how much fun it can be to support us. They might want to join in." With newfound energy, the team of young change-makers gathered their thoughts, unified by a sense of family and community. As the last drops of rain fell, the sun began to peek through the clouds, casting a warm glow over the park, illuminating the faces of every child. Amongst their laughter and shared dreams, Evan realized that they had become something bigger than themselves. They were no longer just kids at the edge of the park, but a force to be reckoned with, a movement brimming with potential. And as they left the shelter of the tree, their hearts soared with renewed purpose. They weren't just standing up for themselves. They were standing for every kid who felt alone, silenced, or overlooked. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but in that beautiful moment, Evan's heart sang with hope. They were ready, and together, this felt like the beginning of a brighter future. As they walked, Timmy looked at Evan with a radiant smile. "We really can change everything, can't we?" "Absolutely," Evan replied, feeling as if they had just stepped into a new chapter of their lives. And in their hearts, they knew this was at the moment they would transform their dreams into reality. Now hear me out. You need to subscribe now to keep up with these incredible stories of transformation. Hit that like button to feed the algorithm and support our journey together. Comment below your thoughts on this inspiring conclusion. How did it make you feel? And don't wait not even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see the power of unity and change. Your support means everything.